All right. Welcome to another BuzzBeat episode. The Charlotte Hornets are Summer League champions, finishing 6-0 in Vegas as they beat the Kings 83-78 in the finals. That feels very strange to say that, but this is Richie, and Darian and Brian will join me for today's episode. As we begin this one, I wanted to remind everyone that giving us a 5-star rating and review on your preferred podcasting app is a great way to support us. The latest Apple review is this. I cannot pronounce the username, so I'm not even going to try. It's gibberish, but it says, "Great podcast. This is the only Hornets podcast I listen to. It's informative and thought-provoking. Keep it up." So, as always, send those in. We will read them on the episodes. It's a feel-good stuff. So we like to read these things and kind of know, where we're headed. And you guys obviously love listening to us. Darian, how's it going? And did you enjoy the undefeated run down in Vegas?
It is going. I always say the Hornets depict my mood, and I can't lie by saying that I'm down today. I'm excited, excited for the future, which I feel like is something we say every time. But this one, it feels a little different. I'm not ready to say the success here will translate over, but it just feels a little more hopeful. Like, got to see some of the guys, got to see them play bad, so got to see them play good, and I think that's very important when it comes to summer league. So I'm ecstatic. How about you, Brian?
Well, look, first, tears in my eyes, boys. Bloody masterclass out there. They left it all on the pitch. And Richie, the review you read off a minute ago was very nice. Look, this is the kind of coverage that championship teams deserve. They deserve this kind of in-depth, thoughtful, thought-provoking coverage, and that's what we're here to deliver for the champion or the Charlotte Hornets. But I'm doing well. I enjoyed watching this team play in summer league. The title was certainly like a fun, a fun addition to the end of it. I wish they hadn't mentioned during the broadcast last night that the Kings have won it twice before. It felt like just sort of devaluing any sort of like actual franchise arc, positivity that you could take from it. So I kind of thought, outside of just the added bonus and the fun and the entertainment of getting to watch them play and sort of like what that brought out in Kon Knueppel from like a competitive standpoint. And we can maybe talk about that a little bit more in a second, but just like the young guys played pretty well. I mean, McNeely, it was sort of like bookended, I think, by McNeely having a great start to summer league. I know Kon didn't have like the best offensive outcome shooting wise against Sacramento, but his play the last week, in Vegas was really rock solid, and just was like a really nice thing, if nothing else, to take from Vegas. The young guys and the first two picks in particular playing well was a real thing to sort of like pull on going forward.
It's funny, Matt is not here on the episode today, but he did comment here. He's sitting in his lawn chair on Tryon Street waiting for the parade to start. Where is everyone? So
yeah.
just hold on there, Matt. They're coming. 9 p.m. is when they'll be there. So just hang out right there.
Yep. Look, everyone's just stuck in line at various Harris Teeters around the Mecklenburg County area, trying to buy up all the bottles of Andre and Corbel. Nothing but the good stuff for the Summer League champs. So I assume once everyone has their celebratory alcohol in hand, then the parade will commence after that.
Yeah. Don't give up that good seat yet.
Yeah. Hold tight, baby. Hold tight. Like Ryan Kalkbrenner in the deep drop. Don't move. Stay. Hold your ground. All right.
All right, let's start before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the player performances. I figured we start with the meaning behind this. Does this mean anything for the Hornets moving forward as after they won the championship here? I don't think there's going to be necessarily a direct correlation in terms how they will perform in the regular season, but I think the biggest thing to me is momentum and the direction of this franchise. Like this 6-game run that the team went on, I think speaks to how connected this team was, the physicality that they played with, the unselfish behavior of the team. And when you look at the run that they were on, there was plenty of injuries and lineup changes and shifting. And we even had PJ Hall, who signed a two-way contract with the Grizzlies right before the championship game. So a lot of different adversity in the way that they were able to achieve this. Others stepped up. Chris Gent did an awesome job as the coach to get this team to play as a cohesive unit. And this is exactly what Jeff Peterson and Charles Lee were looking for out of a team, albeit a summer league team. And I hate to use this term because we've used it 1,000 times, but Hornets DNA shows up again, and this is kind of what they're aiming for. So going 6-0 and winning a ring in Vegas doesn't necessarily mean that they will be an automatic playoff team. Different personnel come October with the oppositions, with the Hornets. But I will say that there is some positives to take away from this. And when I watch the team play, it's more about their style more than anything, kind of leading to their success and not some specific player carrying this team. So it was definitely cool to watch. Darian, what does winning the Summer League Championship mean for this organization, if anything?
Mhm.
And do you think any part of it carries over to the regular season?
I think I mean, you put it perfectly. I think it's the start of something that could be really special moving forward. I think that it's also like a byproduct of finally getting things up, at the most part, stable in the front office. And then now I think we are able to see it now trickle down to the summer league team. And then now the final product, which would be the regular season. I don't think it's going to happen like that. Like all of a sudden we're going to be winning in the regular season this year. But I do think it's just the start. And I think that's just very important. So now that we have that structure in the front office, we saw like I think the easiest thing for the front office to impact in a way that doesn't you have to change too much is the summer league team, and they did that in 2 years. We went from barely winning summer league games to where we had Kai Jones, I think, going up on 4 people in the last second against I believe the Timberwolves in a summer league game to this, and then now eventually it's going to translate to the regular season. So I think that just having that structure, having what you've been preaching this whole time, I think it's easier to have that reflect on a summer league roster than it would be the regular season, like the real team, just because we all know how how much parity is in the NBA. So I think that is just a good start, and I think that going forward as well for the young players, if you're Kon, if you're Kalk, if you're Sion, if you're Tijan, if you're all these guys, next season when summer league does come around, and a couple of those guys might not even play the whole thing, but those new guys that come in, they're going to be the same way. Well, this team just won, so now we obviously know we need to bring it. And if you're just constantly bringing in young talent of guys who are seeing what the Hornets, because I feel like before it was just it's the Hornets, I'm gonna use this time to get my contract, but now it's a little more like they've won something, and now the guy, they're going to pass it down on and on and on. So we'll see, but I think that it's just the start, and hopefully they showed it that the front office, we now are, they've made enough moves to where we kind of believe in them. I think that the summer league team has gotten to a point. I don't expect this every time, but it's once again, heck of a start. And then now, let's see what they do with the real team. But I think it's just all part of the pipeline. I think it's working out great so far.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. I do think, beauty is sort of in the eye of the beholder with this. Like you can, at least in this moment, before any sort of like regular season action takes place for a few months, like you can sort of just us from the outside looking in, like we can mold it and shape it and kind of think about it however we want. Darian, I think you nailed it when you said like it does speak to the fact that like the team has committed a fair amount of resources to making this sort of like a better overall production than it once was, especially if you're going back 6, 7, 8 years ago. I mean, this is way different than things used to look like for Charlotte. And just sort of like when you take something seriously and you sort of have some thoughtful people putting their best foot forward with operating these things, that success can come. I think it's certainly helpful that the Hornets have and I mean part of that too is like Charlotte has a more like operational G League affiliate now with the Swarm, like a far more functional one. And we saw several guys who played a lot of time with the Swarm last season that contributed to the Summer League title too. So like there is some sort of like flywheel approach to all of this. Like you can sort of see, obviously the parent club is, the top of the top of the umbrella, and everything sort of like falls down from there. But like you can see how it's connected. And I think it also speaks to the fact that like the Hornets have really turned over the roster in a lot of ways, and they brought they brought a lot of like, good young players into summer league this season, and they drafted 4 guys this year. They had a top 10 pick last year. He played pretty well the first couple of games, and to John Salon. But like the biggest takeaways for me, I are sort of player by player. But before I sort of jump over to that, Richie, what were your thoughts sort of on the team? Like what if anything does last night's victory in the last 2 weeks in Vegas mean?
I just think it means a lot in terms of just the organization, in terms of the style of play. I think I was very impressed with their offensive sets. And sometimes we see teams that don't have a ton of time together look a little disorganized, disjointed. It wasn't perfect by any means. Summer League's never perfect. But when I watched the Hornets play, they looked very more organized than a summer league team looked. They looked well coached. They played within themselves. They played within their sets. Like even with Kalkbrenner in the lineup, they were trying to space the court. They were trying to play that 5 out, offense. A lot of off ball screens, a lot of ball screens, a lot of players moving, and it kind of spoke to the unselfish nature of this team. They love to use off ball screens to get people moving, to make that extra pass. They love using that away action with Kalkbrenner setting that cross screen for Kon on the weak side. They love to initiate Spain. They love to initiate flare screens, double drags. Like, and even every once in a while, they had Kalkbrenner in the post. So Chris Gent was actually on WFNZ today with Willie P, and he mentioned that 80% of the stuff that they ran in Vegas will actually be used at the big league level. So you can expect a little bit more of the same, and just in terms of the style of play. So, having the 4 rookies there, I think that speaks volume, because they are going to be a little bit more involved with this big league team. You've got KJ Simpson, who played very, very well. He was like the head coach out on the court. He was very mature. You had John Salon, who took steps as well. So I think the team, more so than previous years, kind of like Darian was saying, like, this is a step in the right direction. They played as a collective unit. So I think to me just is the style and kind of what they're going for and how that translates. Not necessarily the 6 wins, but just the way that they played.
Yeah, when we were previewing summer league a couple of weeks ago, I think it was a pod that James and I did. Like that was one of the things I said. To me, is sort of like instead of like production, or in terms of like sort of like especially results based production. I think it's focusing on like scheme is sort of like one of the best things you can do. Because I think a lot of that, I mean, it's cool to hear the 80% number, but there's some, there's a good portion of what they're doing is going to be stuff that the parent club's going to do too, in part because some of it's wide action, it's pistol, it's these like early offense sets that drag ball screens, like every team's running that sort of stuff to an extent, but to see them mix it in, to see them put Kon in certain spots that I think you would expect them to, was really exciting. I thought his just movement, his screen setting, his gravity coming off of down screens, flare screens, his ability to sort of come off a ball screen and make plays in those was really exciting. And like that's how this team's gonna blend him in with LaMelo Ball, with Brandon Miller, with Miles Bridges. Like they wanted not just a shooter, but a high field guy that had size and strength, physicality, that could pass. And so to see Kon do all of that was super exciting. And then the last thing I would just touch on, sort of from like an intangible perspective, was like, I know Kon, went viral or sort of semi-viral a couple of times during the title game last night. He's playing with the headband on, after getting hit in the head in the semifinal game against Oklahoma City. Like, to me, this is sort of trying to like crystal ball things a little bit here, but like that didn't feel like that's the last time that guy suits up, in like a win or go home kind of game for the Hornets while playing through something. Like it felt like if they're gonna actually like turn things around here and like get back to the playoffs and play meaningful basketball, having a psycho competitor like Kon, and I covered him at Duke last year, but to see it like on display, sort of at like the next step of his development at Summer League of all places, was cool to see. And again, it just, to me, it sort of spoke of if they're sort of trying to like alter the alchemy here a little bit, having a guy like Knueppel, super competitive, super team oriented, willing to do anything it takes to win a game, on display was quite cool.
Yeah, we can shift over to the player performances as
Mhm.
you're talking about Kon here. As you mentioned, I absolutely love the fact that he went out there with stitches above his eye and played in the championship game. I would have understood if they had him sit out, but
Mhm.
with the injury history here in Charlotte and the way that those things pile up, and it just seems like any given night someone could be out for 10 straight games. Yeah, you love to see Kon Knueppel in a somewhat meaningless game. Obviously, it's a championship game, but a meaningless game in summer league, go out there and play. I do think that speaks a lot to his character, his personality. Darian, what did you see from the MVP of summer league championship game, Kon Knueppel, as he finished with 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists? Speak to his play in Vegas, either in the championship game or just as a whole.
I mean, I saw everything that we all talked about before, the draft even came along, was that there's specifically offensively, but I mean, there's a lot of things like defensively about him too, especially in this championship game. But he was just going to impact the offense in any way you see fit. If he needed to score, he was scoring. If you needed him to pass, he was passing. Like, and you needed him to move and just create space for others. He was able to do that. And I think that that's kind of like what I was hoping to see, and I think I got that. Even from the very first game. I know that very first game, I saw more of it in that first half, and then it kind of felt like it dwindled that second half. Um, but I like to see that. Yes, he had like a bad second half of that first game, missed the second game, and then came back and then was a completely different player from that very first time. Those are the type of things I look for specifically in summer league, just because it's not easy to come out there and try to. If summer league just feels like you have to impress right away, or everybody's going to say you're not good or whatever. And I mean, they're players. How much of them really care about that? They probably don't, but it's still probably like the pressure of it all. And I think he handled it very well. So I think that like that very first game, that first half, I saw a glimpse of what we specifically Brian was just talking about what he does at Duke and just watching him play at Duke. But then as the games kept going on, we saw, okay, now he's not just impacting just by being a good basketball player. He's scoring, he's passing, he's doing a lot of these other things. And I think that was just huge for him. I mean, even if the shot wasn't falling, there was just so much that he allowed this team to do. And I like how, like, if you think about like the last two games, KJ, for the most part, was doing a lot of the scoring um, up until that point, and then here comes Kon. Okay, now it's my turn to score, and I think he did that, and he had some tough finishes. I think that what we saw from him is that he showed that he's just not a shooter, which I feel like everybody on this podcast has been saying that for months now, is that he's just more than a guy you put in the corner and shoot. And I don't know what it was going to take for people to believe it, but now I see a lot of people believe it. Like, oh, this guy has a lot more to his game. So ultimate competitor. I just like just his complete versatility. I know that sometimes, and even I, to a point, knock him a little bit for just, where is like that max level? And I think it's there. I think that I feel like his potential is a lot higher than I thought it would be, but I never doubted how impactful he could be. And I think that this summer league was just a good showing of that. No matter if you put him on the court with LaMelo, Brandon, Miles, the starting lineup, or you put him on there with Trey Man, Concept, I think that he's going to be able to adjust whoever's around him. And I think that was important when, McNeely went out. Okay, now Sion went out. Tajon's mysteriously pulled out. PJ Hall's gone. And every time I saw a little bit of his game change to accommodate for that. And I think that that's what led to this. And you could really say that about any player, but obviously everybody's watching Kon specifically. So I really like what I saw from him. I like the bounce back. I like the toughness. We knew he could shoot, so that really just wasn't a surprise. But everything else, I just like that he was like, you know what? I could just sit here and shoot and show you that I can shoot, and I could walk away with summer league fine. Everybody would be like, I'm a shooter, and I did that. But I feel like he kind of exposed himself a little bit by trying more, and I think he succeeded in that and performed very well.
Yeah, I think you can make the case that obviously McNeely was probably Charlotte's best player. I think you can make the case that KJ Simpson was probably the most consistent, steady player.
Mhm.
But I think Kon grew the most since his first game.
Yeah.
And he showed a willingness to play hard, play within himself. And he's not out there, like you said, Darian, to lead the team in points. He
Mhm.
cares more about making the right play. He cares more about winning. And whether that's making the extra pass to the corner, making a pass on a roll to the big, playing team basketball, like he's just quick with his decision making in terms of dribble, pass, shoot. And when he does drive the basketball, like he can hold off guys with the threat of his shot. He can hit the big on the roll. And I think, Brian, you and I talked about this, or I had a question after the Buzzbeat Plus episode in Utah about like his lateral quickness. I think this might sound silly, but I think like his lack of athleticism sometimes might help him in a bit in the sense that he sneaks up on players. He's like deceptively shifty and can get by a guy with that first step. So, you
His
know,
his his
but
strength is a huge help too. Like in sort of
yep.
he doesn't like he can win with his strength and his decisiveness and his footwork, both offensively and defensively. He had a nice defensively, he had a nice another nice, rear view pursuit contest in the championship game. Um but he's got that like Jared McCain does this too, where there's sort of like the like quick crossover and then like the quick, sort of like wrong footed shot to, sort of like finish over length around the basket. Like he obviously does have some of these limitations creating separation, like big separation
Mhm.
or finishing over like really good length at the rim. But he's got these little counters and tricks up his sleeve to sort of work around that. He's got a super quick release off the catch. I think you saw that on a lot of these like catch and shoot spot up relocations, and he's such a relocation artist darting around the arc. He caught Devin Carter ball watching for a corner three against Sacramento in the title game, but also just like his strength as like an ability to I think really not nullify, but to make some of the lack of like lateral like speed or like north south burst, like he can kind of make up for it because he can still create separation with his strength and physicality and with like how careful he is with the basketball too. He does it. He's a low mistake, low turnover player. He takes care of the ball, but he can really pass. He can hit. He can sort of like access different areas of the floor as a passer. I thought his chemistry with Kalkbrenner in the pick and roll, or in sort of like when the Hornets were in more like sort of like secondary situations and Kalkbrenner would run the lane, Kon sort of like finding him in traffic ahead of the break or on a nice seal against a cross match. Some of Kon's numbers were pretty encouraging too. I know it's just a couple, handful of summer league games, but per 36 minutes, 20 points, per 36 minutes, 5 assists, per 36 minutes, very strong number. 9 3-point attempts per 36 minutes. It was 55% of his total field goal attempts were threes. One of the big numbers while searching through some of this stuff among rookies is that Jaeger Demon, formerly BYU, now with the Brooklyn Nets, 11 threes per 36 minutes in Summer League, 85% of his field goal attempts, which is kind of funny. But I just thought Kon had such like a nice mix of touching the paint, finishing in the mid range. He's so good on those little like catch and go, pull up, 15 feet out. He can either touch it off the glass or he's got the touch to the mid range to just hit those little pull ups. Feels like they're going to go in a big chunk of the time. And if Kon is ever like those kinds of shots like are why I think he has the ability to be more than just like a spacer and a screener type guy, right? Like those are the kind of shots, those are the province of not just maybe not like star players necessarily, but like guys that drive offense. And with that touch from different levels of the court, with the passing ability, and I thought I touched on this a couple of months ago when we were doing the draft pod. Like I think my favorite micro skill of the 2025 draft cycle was Kon's ability, his patience in particular against drop coverage. He's so good at forcing the defensive center to make a decision, whether they're going to come out at him, they'll come off their line a little bit, and he can throw it to the roll man, whether he's going to get 2 on the ball, and then all of a sudden the low man corner defender is going to help off, and Kon's going to skip it to the corner. He hit someone for a corner 3, I think in either the San Antonio or the OKC games off this action. Or if they stay home on the roller, then Kon can go in and he'll use that little bit of extra space in the paint to finish at the rim. Like he's just got it. He's so comfortable at doing all of these different things, and he's really, really good at exploiting those 2-on-1s. And it's because he's so patient and he's so willing to make that play at like the final moment. And that's really impressive for a guy who's, you know, heading into his rookie season, just like how comfortable he is doing all of that. I thought the screen to screen interactions with him were great, and I think that is going to be stuff that the Hornets can immediately mix in, and it's going to help guys like Brandon Miller, who's a great screen to screener guy as well. Trey Man, LaMelo Ball, like all of these things that can be done to sort of move matchups around the court, to occupy defenders, to create easy, you know, catch and shoot 3-point opportunities, to create cuts and defensive confusion. Like Kon's gravity and his playmaking off those situations is really impactful, and I just kind of can't wait to see how it looks next to you know, Charlotte's guys like LaMelo and Brandon Miller.
Yeah, to Darian's point, he's very flexible with who he can play with. Very smart player, whether he's on the ball, off the ball. Like he knows how to read screens. He knows when to cut. He knows when to give the ball up so he can get it back off of a rescreen. Like just little things like that.
How nice was the little, like in the San Antonio game where they're running that you know, they clear out the right side of the court. I think it was PJ Hall, but it may have been Kalkbrenner. They set a flare screen, and then they're gonna set, like, it looks like they're gonna set a rescreen, you know, a down screen to bring Kon back to the court. Carter Bryant is all over the top side on him, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Kon, you know, puts his hand up. He's reading it the whole way, and he just darts back door and gets the little like cut go lob. But just that was one of my favorite plays of his. And also why, like, you know, he was, some of the like production that Kon had in these last couple of games came against Carter Bryant, Devin Carter. So guys who are like going to be on NBA rosters too. It wasn't like he was just beating up on, you know, sort of like G League guys for these different teams. So yeah, impressive all around from Kon, but his off-ball movement is special, and I think it could be really fun with Brandon, because obviously Miller is a guy who's, you know, excellent off-ball player, super malleable too, and obviously can score from different levels and really pass as well.
Darian, did you have any notes on the defensive side of the court for Kon, and maybe how that compared to your pre-draft notes with Knueppel?
I think he performed as I will say he is, to your point, like his lack of athleticism. I think that it does, even on the defensive side, it does kind of catch people off guard as far as how shifty he actually is. So that surprised me, just because it made me feel like it was more of like seeing him just kind of adjust from college basketball to the pros. So maybe that's more of what it was, but that's the only thing that kind of caught me off guard. Everything else, I mean, I thought he was going to be this guy who, at the end of the day, you know, he's going to play the best defense he possibly can. Now, whether or not, if as a fan or as a NBA viewer, is that, you know, sufficient for you? That's up to you. But for me, I think it's more than enough, especially when you consider like a good team defense. But yeah, he did a lot of that, and I actually only see it getting better, especially as Brian mentioned, his strength. I think that's going to throw us. There's going to be matchups where he's going to really be able to overpower like specific guards that he may not usually be able to catch up with, but his strength is going to disrupt their ball handling, disrupt their momentum. And I think that in a team defensive setting, that's enough. That's enough to cause the turnover. That's because, and like, even if we go back to that first game, that was one of my favorite things about that first game was the numbers didn't show, because I don't think he was getting credited for the stats, but he created a lot. Like, I think it was like back-to-back possessions where he created, you know, opportunity for a steal. So, and then going on, and even into last night, I thought he was playing excellent defense. I mean, he was going around screens, under screens, it didn't matter. So yeah, I think Kon as a defensive player is the type of player where if you are going to really draft him for his offensive upside, this is the kind of defense you need them to provide. And I think he does that. And like I said, I think he's only going to get better. And I think that by the end of his career, we could look at him as this guy who maybe not make an all defensive team, but like everybody who, whether he stays on the Hornets forever or not, every fan base of whatever team he's on is going to walk away and say, "Nah, that was one of our favorite guys." Like when it came to just playing defense, it was very underrated. He may not have the accolades to prove it, but night in, night out, he made plays.
I talked about this in the pre-draft process with him, but like it felt like summer league was just another data point that just reinforced this belief and this sort of like a analysis of mine. I think with Kon, it's like, yes, can you attack his top feet in space? Yes, you can. Laterally, he's not the quickest, and you can get into him with counters and combo moves, and you can reject ball screens, and you can get into his feet and you can beat him up that way. His strength and size means you can't just automatically pick at him by trying to get him in a switch and then try to like isolate and post up and just play bully ball. Like you would, if you're gonna try to like isolate against him, you have to do it in a certain way, in a way that I don't think is as efficient. It's less likely to draw a double team. It's less likely to create a foul. He's just like less vulnerable, I think, in those types of like situations. And that's significant because it speaks to a guy that should be able to be on the court at all times for you, right? Like and I'm looking like down the road for playoff games. We talked about this during the pre-draft process too, while watching the NBA finals. Like what lessons could we pull, right, from watching a team like the Thunder or the Pacers, or just like the kind of guys that were playing on the court for them in the fourth quarters of these close games or leverage minutes or whatever. And like Kon, because he can dribble, pass, shoot on offense, and because he's strong and he can sort of like he's in the right spots as a team defender, he has good instincts, he has good hands, and because he's strong enough to sort of like handle and credibly guard different perimeter attackers, means it's not like Tyler Hero out there, right, where you can just isolate that guy and punish him on the block. You can't do that with someone like Kon, or it seems, I don't think you'll be able to. It remains, I guess, to be proven yet. But that's sort of like my takeaway from him, watching him at Duke and then watching him in summer league here too.
Yeah, I thought he was overall a positive player on that end of the court. If I was going to get nitpicky with some of my notes on that end in just terms of like the downsides, there might have been an instance or two where on like a guard to guard pass where he's one pass away, he might take a little bit of a bad angle to try to steal it and gets up the court a little bit. And because he's not as athletic, that first step by that opponent might get him. But to your point, you guys talked about this in the pre-draft process, and everything kind of held up in the summer league. Even if he does get beat off the bounce, his physicality, his compete level, he's still going to find ways to get back into the play and slow that opponent down as best as he can. And one thing I did note, and this doesn't just apply to Kon, it applies to a lot of different players like Salon, KJ Simpson, very good at locating the rebound and knowing when to kind of come off of your man and get that ball off the floor. I made a mention of this on X a few days ago. If Charlotte is trying to play faster this year, it benefits them to have players that can rebound the ball that are not always bigs and kind of start their transition offense as quickly as possible without having a big man to make that extra pass. So I don't think that could be underestimated there in terms of that type of skill. Oh yeah, and McNeely as well has that skill.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about Ryan Kalkbrenner. It's so funny sometimes watching him on defense. It feels like he's guarding no one. It just feels like he's just out there, just
is he guarding no one or everyone? He's
Maybe.
guarding the rim. He's guarding the restricted area is what he's really guarding, actually.
Yeah. I think I made a mention of this on the Utah game episode, but whether that's like pushing players off their path or on their drive, like his best asset is how he uses his size. And what we saw in summer league, 80%, what Chris Gent said, like he was used in screening actions a lot. And I think that's where he's going to be most effective on offense. Offensively, other than that, like I didn't watch him at Creighton to know how much, but I don't know if I can buy into his shot quite yet. Yeah. If that's going to be something that comes along in year 2 or year 3, but that would be a cool addition to have. But I think just screening, rescreening, and being that guy on offense that is going to move to get other people open. And so while he's not stretching the court, he's out there on the perimeter, allowing other people to kind of do their thing. So Darian, Kalkbrenner, give me your thoughts on him and his campaign here in Vegas.
I like him. I mean, I think that this summer league, and if you look at his stats, I would say probably outside of last night. I think last night statistically he performed pretty well, but outside of that, you look at it and you're like, I don't know about this guy. This guy, especially when you look at our center room. But if you watch the game, I think that he fills a role for the team. I don't think that he's like this all around center that you're going to use every time. I think our centers are, as much as I still say I want a center that can shoot, I don't think it's Kalkbrenner. I believe I feel like his shot chart when I looked at it for 3-pointers, they were all like at top of the key, and I was like, why? But so I don't think that's going to necessarily relay to the NBA, but still, I like, just like you said, how he used his size. I really love his defensive instincts. That's as slow as I feel like his foot is.
Right.
His instincts are there. He knows when to jump. He knows when to get in the way. As you mentioned, he knows when to knock people off their path. And then, like, same with screening on offense. Like, he just knows when to do these things. It's just a matter of, will his body ever let him do that at a high level. I feel like mentally he processes it quick enough. You see him already trying to get in position, whether it be for a rebound, whether it be to contest a shot. It's just a matter of if he'll ever get quick enough to do so. And I don't know if that's there. What I will say is maybe, as time goes on, he'll get better at positioning, so he doesn't have as much ground to cover to make that instinct. But I feel like he knows what he needs to do on the court. When he's on the court, he never felt like he was lost, whether that was offensively, defensively. I mean, especially last night, we saw like a couple of lapses where he was just able to get in the paint offensively. And that was just by knowing where to be. I don't think like a special play, allowed him to get open or anything like that. He just saw that the defense was overcommitting. He just knew to slip through, and then boom, he's right there under the rim. So I think he's just a very smart player. I think he knows where to be. It's just a matter of will his body eventually allow him. But his size and all that, that's going to be super impactful. I don't know, if we're talking future state, I don't know if he'll ever be your all-around everyday big, but I can see him particularly for the Hornets being that guy where when we are playing the Joel Embiids of the world, the Jokic's of the world, he's not going to stop them at all, but it's better than having he's just that size. I think that's going to be where we use him. Because it's almost like unfair throwing Musa out there. As much as I love Musa and I think he's strong and I think he's quick, and that does have some positives when you're going against slower bigs. I think Kalkbrenner is going to be the one to really take on that matchup because he's the one that can match them for size. What the outcome of those matchups will be, they're still Jokic is still Embiid, but I think it's just better than throwing Plumlee, Musa out there. So it gives us a little, just a little help in those kind of games. But I mean, I like him. 34th pick. So it's not like I don't even think they expected him to be. I feel like our center room right now is just a wait and see. And I think they know that they're waiting for the right opportunity to make another move. But right now, for what we got, I think we needed someone like him. So I could see why they would choose him over someone like maybe Maxime Renaud, even though I like Renaud, but it kind of now makes a little more sense because what he provides, whether he improves or not, what he provides right now, I think is beneficial to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, a couple of things. For me with Kalkbrenner, just like taking the good with the bad because like he is a player that certainly has some limitations, but because of his size and his willingness and his commitment to like staying in the paint with that size and that length, like can be in certain situations like a very useful player. Like just start with the offense. I thought he had some nice catches in traffic where he caught the ball high, didn't bring it back down, and was able to catch and finish. I thought his chemistry like late in the pick and roll where the dive has almost turns into like a cut. Like all of a sudden he goes from the roll to being in the dunker spot. Kon's making a move in the paint. Kalkbrenner's positioning him, repositioning himself for a catch and finish. Good stuff there. Thought he set great screens. I mentioned this a second ago. One of the screens he had last night where it was a pick and roll possession for Kon. He comes off a Kalkbrenner screen going left to right. Kalkbrenner clocks whomever it was, trying to guard the ball for Sacramento, and allows Kon to get downhill. He attacks the drop, and because his guy's been eliminated on the play, because of the screen from Kalkbrenner, Kon's able to get basically the defensive possession goes from drop to switch. That's where Kon does that little like left to right crossover and gets in and scores. And like I mean, sometimes, when we sort of like laugh or joke about screen assist and like how valid they are, but that was like a legit screen assist from Kalkbrenner. And to me, because he's not like a pick and pop guy, he's not necessarily a hub, he's not this like lightning quick rim runner and lob catcher who's just trying to like screen and slip and roll and get downhill and just try to get in position for a potential lob. For me, it's really important for him to like hold those screens as much as possible, especially playing with a guy like Kon, or I could see Miller, that being like a really nice feature too. About Brandon, so cerebral and with his size and his patience and those, whether he's coming off a ball screen or a down screen, just like Kalkbrenner really like making sure to like create contact, try to create a little bit of separation, and then get downhill off of it and sort of just like that sort of like more deliberate kind of screen roll approach. I thought his seals in transition were pretty good, and he gets a lot of cross matches, and I'll sort of touch on that a little bit more in a second. My one thing with him is I just wish he would be a little bit more physical with the ball. Like whether it's a post up and he's trying to like isolate 17 feet from the basket, with his back to it. Or, I mean, we saw multiple times in the Philadelphia game where Adem Boma just ripped the ball out of his hands. And those weren't the only two times that happened in Summer League. Like, I would like for him to be like a little bit more defensive and just stronger with the ball. Like, if he's going to initiate 5-out action for you, like he's got to take care of it. Like you can't have the 5 turning the ball over in those scenarios. Defense, like the drop coverage, you saw it at times last night. He can be the deterrence at the rim. I thought he did a decent job. He wasn't matched up on Reynaud a lot. I did think Maxey, if they were going to put Kalkbrenner on him, could have a big game just in terms of the pick and pop. And it just, that never really got going for Sacramento, maybe in part because Nick Clifford was, saddled with foul trouble. And he's, clearly the best guard creator on that roster by a lot. Kalkbrenner, 2.4 blocks per 36 minutes, decent, not amazing number. We talked about this last week, but like his rim protection numbers, because he's not this because he is a good rim protector, but not like an amazing shot blocker. We're just going to kind of have to use, along with the film, like other numbers to measure, to be indicators for how effective he's being that, opponent rim field goal percentage when he's on the court or when he's the closest defender, the amount of rim field goal attempts per 40 minutes. Like those are the things we're going to have to like look at that stuff, I think, to really like determine just how effective he's being. The block number per 36 minutes. I mean, look, it's less than a lot of other like rookie centers had at Summer League. Young Henson, 33.3 blocks per 36 minutes. Yannick Niederhauser, 2.5. Beranger, 3.9. Danny Wolf, 2.9. Come on, Malawatch, only 2.1. Carter Bryant, 2.5. Derek Queen, 1.3. So you can see Kalkbrenner better than some of those guys. It's kind of a weird sample, but just one other thing that I was sort of looking at. Darian, a second ago, you were talking about Kalkbrenner being a guy that you can sort of like throw at these like opposing back to the basket guys. And like, that's an interesting way to use him. I think no doubt. And I think when you see him against certain guys, especially like non-pick and pop threats, that's going to make a lot of sense. I thought it was interesting how much he was used to cross match at Summer League. I mean, he guarded Devin Carter a fair amount last night, who's a 6'2" guard. And they basically just said, like, if you've got a non-shooter out there, they're going to put Ryan Kalkbrenner on that guy, and they're just going to let him sink in the paint. And it's something we saw Boston has done with Luke Kornet. You've seen Ryan Kalkbrenner doing the Kornet contest too. Like, I think that's the roadmap for him, right? And Kornet's a guy that has become a very good team defender, even though he's not like a twitchy athlete. And so my guess would be that is something that's a blueprint of sorts to go off of. I also like that when they cross match, when they have Kalkbrenner guard Devin Carter or whatever, that when they're able to run in the other direction, then they can get 7-1 Ryan Kalkbrenner sealed, deep in the paint against a shorter player. And they sort of, I think at times were able to steal points occasionally off that. So just a good use of complementary basketball, right? Like you're taking advantage of a team having a non-shooter out on the court. And I think really that's when Charlotte's going to try to like dial up the usage with Kalkbrenner this year, is to like really put pressure on teams that have one or two sort of like shaky perimeter shooters, whether it's a ball handler like Carter or a spot up guy, at the 4 or something like that. So Again, I don't think he's sort of like quick or twitchy enough to like really be like elite in that sort of role, like a la Rob Williams was for Boston. But like, I think he can be productive, and he can help you on the glass too. He's not an amazing above the rim rebounder, but when he boxes out and when he closes down the paint and when he boxes out, it can allow these other guys, like Richie was saying, Kon, Miller, like those guys can swoop in and grab boards. So I thought Kalkbrenner was solid, and again I like some of the like uses that we saw for him out in Vegas.
Yeah, last thing I'll add about Kalkbrenner, because both of you guys did a good job of talking about his strengths and weaknesses. He does affect the shots around the rim, whether or not he's getting the blocks, like Brian said. Like, that's not going to always be the indicator. Whether he's closing out to a guy in the corner, he's going to affect the shot, kind of like Luke Cornett. I was actually you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, when I was thinking about Luke Cornett as a free agent target for Charlotte, I was like, wow, he could be the perfect mentor for Ryan. And Charles Lee had a great relationship with him in Boston, and maybe he can kind of like take Ryan under his wings and show him the same type of stuff that he emphasized there with Luke Cornett. And you talk about keeping the ball high on those passes and on those lobs, but he's got to do a better job with that with the rebounding. Like, we hear this all the time in middle school basketball, like chin it, like keep it at your chin. You're so tall, you don't need to be bringing it down at your waist. And if you lack a little bit of physicality, that ball is going to be taken from, even a 6'2" guy. You know what I mean? So definitely impactful player. Obviously there's some downsides to playing him. Any other thoughts about any of the players before we flip it over to our preferred or projected depth chart?
Darren, you have anything?
I was just gonna quickly say about Sion James is that what I saw from, because it's really hard to gauge because he obviously didn't play that much, but what I saw from him is about what, I mean, maybe I expect him to be a little more impactful, but I saw some people like, he didn't really put up numbers. I just don't see him as a numbers guy, especially in summer league. But I just don't see him as a numbers guy. I see him as the team knows how impactful he is. The coach knows how impactful he is. Like, he's one of those guys where he's going to play defense. He is. When you talk about Kon and say, oh, he's just a guy that's going to float around and just help everybody out, I think people thought that's what Kon would do in terms of like, oh, he is just nothing. But I think Sion is just a guy that you're going to put him in a corner. You're going to have him shoot. Once he finds his shot. I know he didn't find it in summer league, but I thought he was pretty decent defensive. I know there were some things that he did that like he kind of like was a little bit out of his element. I felt him like trying to get too many steals, and then he would take himself out to play. But as far as like, I felt like he was a pretty decent glue defender at most times. So I know that like for some people it may be a little underwhelming, but I think that summer league is just not the place for him to show how good he is. I just don't see him being that kind of player. That's kind of really my biggest thing. He didn't play enough for me to really nitpick and say like specific instances, but I saw enough to say, okay, he does this at an NBA scale. There's room for him in the league. It's just a matter of, obviously the shot has to fall and there's a couple of other things, but I mean, I walked away happy with what I saw from the very little I saw.
Yeah, the hip injury was unfortunate. Would have loved to have seen him play more. He would have been like right at home in last night's game, side by side with Kon. I touched on his connective passing last week when we sort of did one of these debriefs with Matt and with James, and I thought in the game against Philadelphia his connective passing was really good in that game. I thought he like either in transition or just sort of like finding the seams in the half court, very solid, just like kept the gears churning as a guy that can sort of like maintain or like further amplify advantages with his quick decision making too. Defensively, everyone knows of him, I think, for the point of attack defense. The fact that he wasn't sort of like a stocks guy, a lot of blocks and steals. I think there's sort of like there's a wonder about like how impactful is his team defense. I think that remains to be seen, but like seeing him at Duke up close, studying his film at Tulane, where he played a lot of like matchup zone. I think his rotations, knowing when to peel in, when to peel switch, like very, very good. And then since it's been a few days since we talked about this guy, I don't want to actually go into a whole conversation, but Tajon Salon played very well, early on in ways that were meaningful. James, Matt, and I talked about that. I guess after the first 2 or 3 summer league games, if you want more thoughts on that, go back and get that analysis. We sort of talked about it for an extended period of time, but like that was very encouraging to me. I was sort of like more focused on the incoming rookies this year as opposed to the returners, the returning picks, Salon, KJ, like that kind of stuff. And to see Tijon seemingly take a jump with his coordination, his strength, his fluidity, and sort of like how that manifested on the court was pretty encouraging too. The last thing I would say, just to tie on back to Sion, is like I think that guy can play in the NBA. He just needs to be able to hit this like sort of like threshold offensively when he doesn't have the ball. And like because he's going to be in the corners, he's going to be in the dunker spot, but like can he capitalize scoring wise? Because we know he can make the next pass. We know he can drive and touch the paint off a catch and go. But like, is he going to see those hard closeouts? Is he going to force teams to rotate out to him to set up those extra pass scenarios, like, or the catch and goes where he can drive and then kick it out to the second side, like, because that's when he really excels. But he's just going to have to hit this sort of like offensive spot up efficiency threshold to really open the floor up for those other parts of his game. But that's something to keep an eye on more, in preseason and heading into his rookie season too.
And I got one more thing. I just want to shout out KJ just because he took on that leadership role for this summer league team. And we've seen plenty of times of returning guys for us who we felt like we didn't get enough of them the first year and they come back the second year and they kind of almost fall to the background in that second year. It's just weird. Like they don't really, you would think they would become the leaders and they kind of just don't. They kind of just, where they kind of were stuck at in the rotation for the big league team, they kind of just reassumed that role, but for summer league. I think KJ was like, no, this is my time to be, as you mentioned, to be the coach on the floor. And I think that's just huge. That's one of the small things that, yes, it's not going to show up on the stat sheet. Well, I guess for KJ it did at times because he has some pretty good offensive games. But I just really appreciated that from him. And, and I see, the kind of guys we drafted this year, I can see them doing that next year. But, yeah, that was just big for KJ to be able to say, LaMelo's not here, Brandon's not here, Trey Mann's not here. This is my time to not even try to be the star player, but just be a leader. I think he was more focused on being a leader than seeing how much he could do with the ball in his hand. I feel like that's what specifically our guards in the past have done. I'm here to score. I'm here to show what I can do because I didn't get to shoot that much with the big leagues. It's like, no, KJ was just more so, if the shooting comes, it comes, but I'm here to more so just be an engine for this team. And I think he did that. And it's not easy. It's obviously not easy. So I just want to give a shout out to him for that.
And I actually thought that was a little bit surprising. I didn't know he had.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Like, that was my biggest takeaway with KJ. Like, he showed tremendous leadership. His personality, kind of taking that on as the point guard, is something that can't be overstated. And he's a guy that, like, a lot of his success has been built on hustle, grit, like fearlessness. Like, physically, he's outmatched. Like, he's going to over dribble sometimes because he's forced to change direction. And the idea that effort is a skill. And if that's what you buy into, that's kind of what you hold on to with Simpson in terms of making it in the league, because he may not be the most physically gifted guy, but we saw the personality, we saw the grit, we saw the effort, and then the swing skill. Darian, you mentioned at the tail end there, if he can convert his threes, I think that's going to have some longevity with how he can make it in the NBA. But to wrap this episode, we won't make this segment too long. We're going to take a look at the depth chart as we leave Summer League and figure out if any of the play of some of these players has affected the way that you view them upcoming in October. So, Darian, things can change, a ton between now and October. But as of today, give me your starting five.
Oh, man. So right now, my starting five would be LaMelo, Colin Sexton with a caveat of Kon. I think Kon is Kon's job at some point. I think that they're just going to start the season off with Colin Sexton, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, and Musa. That's my starting five for now. But like I said, I don't know when that threshold will be when Kon eventually takes over. And also you have to consider the fact that maybe they have this conversation with Colin before they do it. I don't think you could ever really justify taking out Colin and putting in Kon to Colin, who might be averaging 18 by this point. So I would feel like there has to be some conversation for that. But yeah, that's my day one as of right now, at least starting lineup.
Yeah, when I was doing this exercise to prepare today, I've got LaMelo, Kon Knueppel, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, Moussa Diabate, and I've got my second unit of Colin Sexton, Trey Mann, Josh Green, Tijon Salon, and Plumlee. And with the sort of like the Grant Williams, when he comes back, he will factor sort of like heavily into these sort of considerations too, as a guy that can give them some stretch and some playmaking and some strength, some rebounding, some defense, for some versatility from the 4 and small ball 5 position. I think you're right. I could see them starting with either Sexton or Green at that sort
Oh
of
yeah,
like
Green. I forgot
that
about
2
him.
spot. But like I hope it's like, man, I want to see Kon play a lot with LaMelo and Brandon. He can do that coming off the bench. But just like at some point, come middle of the season, I hope all of these guys are healthy, and I hope Kon is playing with the starters. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see games where Charlotte closes with LaMelo, Sexton, Kon, Miller in a 5. Grant or someone else, Musa, whatever. So yeah, how about you, Richie?
I have the exact same starting 5 as Darian: Ball, Sexton, Miller, Bridges, and Diabate. I don't know if that's my preferred one or if that's just kind of what I'm predicting. I considered putting Kon Knueppel in the starting lineup, but then that kind of makes the second unit a little bit weird in terms of having Sexton and Mann and not having Knueppel in the second. Like, I feel like Knueppel is perfect to play alongside Trey Mann. And so Dinwiddie, you didn't even factor in there, Brian. Like, you think Dinwiddie's just like a third point guard?
I mean, who would you put him above in this
I guess
in this setup, man?
I guess
I'd rather have
Josh
Mann.
Green would go by the wayside if it was like Dinwiddie, Mann, Knueppel, Salon, and Kalkbrenner or Plumlee.
I guess the only thing with Dinwiddie is like, yes, he gives you like juice with the ball. He can create, he can play make. I mean, I don't know. Green still, I'm not like a Josh Green guy by any means, because he's so like such a ghost offensively. But just his athleticism and some of the defensive punch he gives you is something that you're not getting from a lot of these other guys. And just like Dinwiddie's skill set is a little more redundant next to LaMelo Ball, Colin Sexton, Trey Mann, right? And including guys like Miller and Bridges and Kon are going to handle the ball too. So just like, to me, Green, I would give like a slight nod, only because like or slight nudge, only because like he's giving you wing defense in sort of like that like low usage 5th option type stuff that you know can be useful. I guess he's injured right now too, so that's something else to consider. But yeah, I think that's where I'm at.
And I think there's something for, like, even though I had Colin Sexton in my starting lineup, I think there's something to think about with, because I believe he's on an expiring, him coming off that second unit. And they're saying, you do whatever. Like, we know we're buying into who you are as a person, of course, because I know Charles Lee raved about that. And it's obvious when you watch him play, like the type of player he is. But you do you in that second unit. And that also gives you that chance to, whether Jeff Peterson wants to trade him midseason or he can, play himself into a contract. I think it gives him that ability. But it's basketball at the end of the day, so it's really just about how you kind of stagger those minutes. But that could be in consideration as well. But I do see it kind of flip-flopping. I have no idea when that point will be, because I don't think technically you could ever justify at least rookie year putting him over Colin Sexton. So that's kind of my only thing. But yeah, for the most part, I'm pretty leaning on Sexton being in the starting lineup. But at some point, I do believe that they'll give it to Kon.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the biggest point of debate is the Knueppel thing, and then just what they do at center, because Diabate is undersized.
Yeah.
But I like, of the 3 guys, I like Diabate the best, just because he's proven himself with that energy, the offensive rebounds. But when you look at that starting lineup that we just mentioned, Darian, it's kind of odd. Like, not a ton of size, but I'm not going to put Kalkbrenner in there just because he's a rookie and to add size just for the sake of adding size. So I think the center rotation, whether that's the starting center or the backup center, I think that's where the debate comes. And then Grant Williams just kind of throws everything for a loop, because we have no idea, when he's coming back. Like, he wasn't even in my top 10 in the depth chart, because I'm not even considering him a part of the rotation until January or February. I mean, who knows when he's coming back? And then just go ahead.
Well, no, sorry, you keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
And then just looking at the roster in general, they've got to cut this thing down to 15 at some point. Pat Connaughton doesn't seem to be a factor. And then Nick Smith Jr., if Josh Green is thrown out there in trade talks, like they've got to narrow it down by a couple players here.
It's also worth mentioning too, like Liam, I almost have to remind myself of this. Like Liam McNeely played great at Summer League to start, before he was shut down. And like, I mean, if you're looking at that backup 3 role right now, like I'd rather see McNeely in that than Josh Green,
Agreed.
But like, I'll be curious to sort of like see if and when, sort of like how that role is legislated. And like Sion James is someone to factor into this as well too. I will say I do like, regardless of whether he starts or not, I do want like Diabate to play with LaMelo because like he does give you somewhat of a vertical threat at the 5 spot. And that's something that, Kalkbrenner can set good screens and do stuff as a roller, but he's not like an above the rim guy. Plumlee was once upon a time, but I'm not sure. And I did not see a lot of him last season. So if he's still like a lob threat, I see him more of as like a, an elbow high post, passing hub than I do sort of like a pure screen roll partner like he was like with LaMelo earlier in his career. But Diabate being the guy, and he can do some stuff on like, he's a decent short roll passer too. Nothing crazy, but like he can make the next pass, kick to the corner, like that kind of stuff. So I just like him as like a pick and roll partner for LaMelo. Maybe not like long term, but just like in a pinch with this current center rotation, I think there's some utility there.
I also have no idea what the role will be with Plumlee. I could see him starting day one. I could also see him being the third center.
I could see him being like a utility center. Like, oh, we have a bunch of shooters on the floor. Here you go. Pat distribute to them.
I could see them going. Like, I think Musa has to be one of the top 2. But like I could see them going in any direction with the center rotation. And like I'm very interested to see what happens with Connaughton, Dinwiddie, NSJ, Josh Green, just sort of like, where and how guys are moved, whether it's certain guys being shipped off before the season starts or guys who are maybe moved in the middle of the season, salary numbers, whatever, or just as a means to sort of like free up playing time for some of the younger guys. Something to keep an eye on. I'd be curious, like I don't think NSJ does not have like positive trade value or whatever, but like he does become, I mean, like there's got to be some team that has interest in him as like an asset in distress, right? Like not that I think like that's going to cause Charlotte to like be able to extract something or whatever. I'm not suggesting that, but just I will be curious to see like if his run is in fact sort of like done in Charlotte, and it's crazy just how many guards are probably ahead of him in the rotation right now. I'll be curious to see like where NSJ ends up post Charlotte. So something else to keep an eye on.
All right, as we wrap here, I wanted to read off one comment that I think summarizes our thoughts, most people's thoughts, before we wrap here. It's from Rohan Patel. He says, feels like this summer league run at least gives you a proof of concept. It was obvious that the staff wanted us to do well at the summer league. They were able to put together a roster and game plan to get that done, and that is progress. So I think that does a good job of summarizing this episode and putting an end to that. Thanks to everyone for tuning